You know that feeling? You're trying to really connect with students, figure out what makes them tick in terms of learning, and you look into motivation or instruction research,
Hmm.
and boom, you're facing this like huge range of different theories. It can feel like trying to navigate with, I don't know, a dozen maps that just don't quite match up.
That's a really spot-on analogy.
Hmm.
Both motivation and instruction, they're incredibly rich fields of study, always evolving,
Right.
which, yeah, unfortunately can lead to a bit of fragmentation. It's easy to get sort of lost in the weeds of one specific theory
Hmm.
and miss the bigger picture of how they actually connect.
Exactly. So think of this as maybe your streamlined route through that tricky landscape. We're doing a deep dive today, trying to pull out those crucial threads connecting motivation and instruction in educational psychology.
Yeah.
The goal really is to see how these two, fundamental parts of learning aren't separate islands at all. They're parts of the same ecosystem.
And we're looking at a really insightful piece today that lays out a kind of two-step approach to understanding this integration.
Yeah, okay.
First, it talks about intra-domain integration. So basically, how do we bring some coherence within motivation research itself and within instruction research?
Right. Tidy up each house first.
Exactly. And then it tackles the interdomain integration, how these sort of newly coherent views of motivation and instruction actually talk to each other, influence each other.
Okay, let's start with step one then. Interdomain integration. And the paper kicks things off with motivation and engagement. Now, as we both know, motivation research is, well, it's sprawling, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You've got self-efficacy, goal orientations, what students value.
Right.
It's a long list of really important but, distinct ideas.
It is. And for a long time, the field has really benefited from digging deep into all these different motivational ideas.
Yeah.
But that richness, well, it's also made it challenging to build a single unified framework.
Yeah.
It's like having a fantastic toolbox, but maybe not knowing how all the tools fit together.
And this paper we're looking at highlights Pintrich's work from 2003, I think, as a key step towards building that toolkit. He asked some really fundamental questions like what actually gets students going in the classroom right here, right now?
Precisely. Pinterest really shifted the focus toward the immediate context, the classroom.
Hmm.
What specific needs, what beliefs energize students in that particular situation?
Mm-hmm.
He also asked that bigger question, what do students want?
Mm.
Really digging into those core human drives
Yeah.
that learning can tap into, the need to feel competent,
Yeah,
to believe in their own self-worth, and to actually achieve their goals.
those deep-seated drivers that, yeah, learning can either spark or, unfortunately, sometimes extinguish. And then his third question, the how. How do students actually get what they want in a learning setting?
Exactly. And that brings in the vital piece about agency, self-regulation,
Yeah.
the planning, the monitoring, the strategies students use to actually reach their learning goals. Those three questions together really pushed the field towards a more holistic view. And building on that, the paper introduces Martin's motivation and engagement wheel as a really concrete example of this intra-domain integration.
The wheel, yeah, I've come across that. It's this visual thing, right? Tries to map a whole bunch of different motivation ideas onto one structure.
That's the one.
Can you give us a quick rundown of some of the main theories feeding into it?
Absolutely. It pulls heavily from social cognitive theory, especially that idea of self-efficacy, that core belief, can I actually do this task?
Crucial.
Then you've got self-determination theory, which really emphasizes those basic psychological needs we all have. Autonomy, feeling competent, those are huge drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Expectancy value theory is also key, highlighting that students get motivated when they both expect they can succeed and they actually see the value in the task.
Right, so it's not enough just to feel like you can do it. You also have to see the point in doing it.
Exactly. And the wheel also weaves in ideas from need achievement and self-worth theories, looking at how students approach success, how they avoid failure, how they protect their sense of self. Okay, goal theory is another big influence, distinguishing between, say, wanting to truly master the material versus just wanting to look good or get a grade.
Performance goals versus mastery goals.
Right, and whether you're approaching success or avoiding failure within those. And finally, self-regulation theories inform the engagement side, how students manage their learning, and attribution and control theories look at how students explain successes and failures and whether they feel they have control.
Wow, okay, that's a pretty broad synthesis. So how does the wheel actually organize all these different bits and pieces? What's the logic behind its structure?
Well, it organizes things along a few key dimensions. One big distinction is internal versus external. So motivation is seen as more internal, like beliefs and feelings.
Inside the student's head.
Yeah. Whereas engagement is more about the outwardly observable actions and tendencies.
What they actually do.
Right. Another crucial dimension is adaptive versus maladaptive. So positive motivation and engagement are on one kind of spectrum.
The helpful stuff.
And the hindering factors, like anxiety or disengagement, they're on a separate negative spectrum. It's not just low positive motivation, it's actively negative.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
And finally, it groups specific sort of lower level factors under broader, higher order dimensions.
Okay, so layers of organization. What are those main big categories in the wheel?
There are 4 main higher order dimensions. You've got positive motivation, that's the stuff that energizes and directs good learning. The positive engagement, the proactive behaviors. Then on the other side, negative motivation, feelings, and beliefs that undermine learning. And finally, negative engagement, the behaviors that actively pull students away from learning.
Right. Can you give us maybe 1 or 2 examples under each of those, just to make it concrete?
Sure. So under positive motivation, you'd find things like self-efficacy, valuing the task, and having a mastery orientation, wanting to really understand.
Got it.
Positive engagement includes things like planning and monitoring your work, managing tasks well, and persistent sticking with it when it gets tough.
Okay. And the negative side?
Negative motivation covers things like anxiety, fear of failure, and feeling like you have uncertain control over outcomes.
That feeling of helplessness.
Yeah. And negative engagement includes behaviors like self-handicapping, creating excuses beforehand, and just outright disengagement, tuning out.
So the wheel helps us see that motivation isn't just like on or off. You can be driven by really different forces, some helpful, some harmful.
Exactly.
And engagement isn't just being busy, it's about what kind of busy and if it's actually helping you learn.
Precisely. And what's really encouraging is that research, using pretty sophisticated stats like confirmatory factor analysis, has consistently backed up this structure. It seems to hold true across different groups of students, different ages.
Okay. And how does the wheel show the link between motivation and engagement? Because they're obviously tied together.
Right. The wheel generally shows motivation as the initial spark, the impetus for engagement. If you're positively motivated, you're much more likely to engage positively. But it's not just one way. It's often cyclical. Positive engagement, especially if it leads to success, can feed back and strengthen your motivation because it's a reinforcing loop.
That feels right intuitively. Success breeds success, kind of. The paper also mentions a tool, the MES, Motivation and Engagement Scale.
Yes, the MES. It's a self-report questionnaire, basically, that lets educators or researchers measure where students fall on each of those 11 specific factors in the wheel.
Okay.
And there are different versions for different age groups, which is helpful.
So the wheel sounds like a really useful framework for getting that intra-domain integration sorted out on the motivation side. But the paper's careful to say it's not the only way to look at it,
Exactly. The wheel is one very useful model, and it focuses particularly on those internal intrapersonal factors. The paper rightly acknowledges other researchers have proposed different integrative models, and there are other good multidimensional measures out there too. The key point here is that the wheel is a strong, well-validated example of how the field is moving towards that first vital step, coherence within the motivation domain.
Got it. So that's step 1A done, bringing together the scattered ideas within motivation and engagement. Now, step 1B, intra-domain integration for instruction. And the paper immediately flags the importance of the learning environment, which obviously is totally tied up with motivation.
Absolutely. You can't really talk about motivation without talking about the context. A supportive, well-designed learning environment is just fundamental.
Yeah.
And the huge part of that environment is the instruction itself. And here the paper dives into a debate that's, well, it's been around for decades in education.
You mean the classic tension. Explicit, direct instruction on one side and more constructivist discovery learning on the other.
That's the one. Feels like people have been arguing about it forever.
Totally.
On one hand, you have explicit instruction, clear explanations from the teacher, structured practice, modeling skills.
Teacher-led.
Right. On the other, constructivism or discovery learning emphasizes students exploring, solving problems, building their own understanding, often with less direct teacher input.
The guide on the side versus the sage on the stage idea.
That's the common shorthand, yeah. But the paper rightly argues that seeing these as completely separate, opposing camps could be a false dichotomy. There are actually overlaps, potential synergies. Think about scaffolding, giving temporary support that you gradually fade out.
Right.
You can do that effectively in both explicit and more constructivist settings.
Yeah, you can explicitly teach something, then scaffold the practice as they get more independent. So how does the paper suggest bridging this gap within instruction?
It introduces load reduction instruction, or
Yeah.
LRI, as a really good example of this interdomain integration for teaching methods.
Load reduction instruction, LRI.
Okay, the core idea of LRI is to strategically blend the clarity of explicit instruction with the active processing you get from guided independent learning.
Load reduction. Sounds like it's about making learning less demanding, maybe less stressful for students.
That's part of it, certainly. But it's maybe more precise to say it's about optimizing the cognitive demands.
Yeah.
It's really grounded in cognitive load theory.
Ah, okay. CLT.
Right, which, as you know, talks about intrinsic load and the inherent difficulty of the topic itself, and extraneous load, the unnecessary mental effort caused by, say, confusing instructions or poor layout.
Got it. So LRI tries to clear away that extraneous mental clutter. So students can focus their limited brain power on the actual learning, the intrinsic load.
Precisely. LRI aims to minimize that extraneous stuff that doesn't help learning and to manage the intrinsic load effectively, especially when students are just starting out with a topic.
Okay.
And to really get how LRI blends those approaches, it helps to quickly think about how memory works.
Oh, yeah. Always good for a refresh. Lay it on us.
Okay, so we've got working memory, that limited mental scratch pad where we juggle new info and long-term memory, our huge, basically unlimited knowledge store. Learning is essentially moving information from that temporary working memory into the more permanent structures of long-term memory. The catch is, working memory is tiny.
Seriously limited.
Yeah. It can only hold a few bits of information for a very short time. Long-term memory, though, is vast.
So if we flood working memory with too much stuff or poorly organized stuff, that critical transfer to long-term memory just doesn't happen properly. Learning breaks down.
You got it. And that's where LRI steps in, with 5 key principles designed to smooth that transfer and build solid understanding in long-term memory.
Okay, what are these 5 principles of LRI?
First, reduce the initial difficulty. Make sure the starting point matches where the learner is at.
Makes sense.
Second, provide appropriate support and scaffolding as they learn. Don't throw them in the deep end.
Right.
Third, allow plenty of opportunity for practice. Building fluency and automaticity is key.
Practice, practice, practice.
Fourth, give appropriate feedback and, importantly, feed forward, not just saying what was wrong, but guiding them on how to improve next time.
Actionable advice.
Yes. And the 5th principle is where the integration really happens. Guided independent learning.
Ah, okay. I can see how those first 4 really build the foundation. They're about getting that knowledge and skill embedded.
Exactly.
And then principle 5, guided independent learning. That's where the explicit teaching gives way to more student-led exploration, but with support.
That's precisely it. Principles 1 to 4 are about building that solid knowledge base in long-term memory, making skills fluent, almost automatic. Once learners have that, then they're ready to benefit from more independent learning, exploring, problem solving, without getting totally overwhelmed cognitively. The sequence is crucial.
So it's not either explicit or discovery. It's often explicit, then guided discovery.
For many cases, yes, especially for novices. And the paper also mentions the expertise reversal effect.
Ooh, what's that? Sounds interesting.
It's a really important point. It basically says that instructional methods that work great for beginners can actually become less effective, even counterproductive for experts.
Really? How so?
Well, once you have a strong, well-organized knowledge base in your long-term memory, very explicit step-by-step instruction can feel redundant. It might even interfere with your ability to draw on your existing knowledge flexibly. Experts often benefit more from less structure, more open-ended problems.
Huh. Interesting. So LRI is primarily aimed at that journey from novice towards expertise.
That's its main sweet spot, yes. Providing the right support at the right time to build expertise.
Right.
But, like you hinted, even experts become novices when faced with something totally new.
Sure.
And then those LRI principles might become very relevant again, just adapted for their higher starting point.
Okay, super interesting. So we've covered the intra-domain integration for both sides, the motivation and engagement wheel bringing coherence to motivation, and load reduction instruction integrating different teaching approaches. Now for the big one, step 2, the inter-domain integration. How do motivation and instruction actually interact?
All right, this is where it gets really dynamic. We're looking at the interplay, the back and forth between student motivation and engagement. and the instructional methods being used. The core idea. They're not separate things. They're deeply connected and influence each other constantly.
And the paper starts by saying LRI principles can directly impact motivation and engagement. That seems logical, good, clear instruction should make students feel more motivated, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If instruction is well structured, it reduces frustration, which lowers disengagement. If the difficulty is appropriate, not too hard, not too easy, it minimizes anxiety, but still offers a challenge, leading to feelings of competence.
Yeah,
Seeing yourself make progress through practice and getting useful feedback, that's a huge boost for self-efficacy and for valuing the learning.
definitely.
And the paper mentions there's empirical evidence for this link. Studies using scales measuring LRI practices show that teachers using LRI tend to have students who report more positive motivation and engagement
Okay.
and less of the negative stuff like anxiety or disengagement.
So, effective teaching isn't just about pouring knowledge in, it's actively shaping the student's mindset for learning too.
Precisely.
But it's not just a one-way street, is it? Instruction influences motivation, but the paper says it's cyclical. Motivation influences instruction too.
Exactly. A student's motivation and engagement levels can significantly affect how well subsequent instruction actually lands. Think about it. If students are already motivated, already engaged,
Mm-hmm.
they're much more likely to put in the mental effort needed to process new information deeply, connected to what they already know. This makes more complex instruction potentially more effective for them.
It's like a positive feedback loop. Success leads to motivation, which leads to more successful learning, which leads to more motivation.
Yes, exactly. A virtuous cycle.
Can you walk us through an example of how that might play out?
Sure. Let's use self-efficacy again. Imagine a teacher using LRI strategies effectively. Students start grasping foundational ideas, building some initial skills. This early success builds their self-efficacy, that I can do this feeling. Now, with higher self-efficacy, they're more likely to tackle the next learning task with more effort, more persistence.
They lean in more.
Right. They're more willing to try challenging things, maybe adapt better if they hit a snag. And that increased effort and better adaptation leads to more learning, more skill development.
Which then boosts their self-efficacy even further.
Exactly. It's that upward spiral. Feeling capable drives effort. Effort builds competence. Competence reinforces feeling capable.
Powerful stuff. And how does this cycle then affect how a teacher might adjust their LRI approach?
Well, as teachers see students becoming more competent, partly because they're more motivated and engaged,
Yeah.
they can start tweaking the LRI principles.
Okay.
Maybe gradually increase the difficulty, offer less explicit scaffolding, encourage more independent practice or problem solving, shift feedback towards more complex aspects.
Tailoring the support.
Exactly. It's about matching the instructional support to the student's evolving capabilities, always remembering that motivation is a key part of that evolution.
The paper even hinted there's some early research suggesting teachers might subconsciously adjust their LRI based on the class's general vibe, maybe linked to motivation levels?
That's right. There's some preliminary work suggesting that link from motivation back to instruction in LRI studies. Teachers might, for instance, provide even more initial support or simplify things further if they sense the class average prior learning is low, which could well be influenced by overall motivation and engagement.
Interesting.
It just underlines how intertwined these things are, and yeah, more research is definitely needed to unpack those dynamics fully.
It really hammers home that point. Motivation and instruction are two sides of the same coin. You can't really optimize one without thinking about the other. The paper even tries to get really practical, mapping specific LRI or cognitive load theory strategies onto parts of the motivation and engagement wheel.
Yeah, that's a helpful way to visualize the connection. For example, things like using mental practice or worked examples, those can directly support students' planning, monitoring, task management, key positive engagement factors.
Okay.
Or strategies like checking for understanding frequently, providing templates, those can bolster persistence when things get tough.
Right.
And on the flip side, techniques to reduce split attention, like not having students look back and forth between text and a diagram constantly, or using different modalities, reducing redundant information. Those can directly help lower anxiety or combat disengagement.
So specific teaching moves can target specific motivation or engagement issues.
That's the idea. It gives concrete examples of how instructional choices can potentially influence those motivational states.
Okay, this integrated view is incredibly useful. But realistically, the paper also points out these frameworks have limits, right? They're not perfect solutions.
Absolutely. It's crucial to keep a critical eye. For the motivation and engagement wheel, the paper acknowledges that any broad framework might miss some nuances of individual theories. Sure, there's always a trade-off when you categorize complex things, and while the wheel structure is generally well supported, it might not capture every student's experience perfectly. There's also the ongoing challenge in psychology of the jingle-jangle fallacy, making sure different terms are actually measuring different things.
Right, making sure self-efficacy isn't just another name for confidence in a specific context, for example.
Something like that, yeah. Ensuring the distinctions are meaningful.
And what about limitations for load reduction instruction?
A key boundary condition is that emphasis on guided, independent learning, especially for novices. Pure, unguided discovery can just overwhelm working memory if you don't have enough background knowledge. That guidance piece in LRI's fifth principle is vital.
Right. Don't just throw them in.
And also remember, LRI is mainly about that novice to expert journey. It might be less relevant or need different application for learners who are already experts in an area.
Unless they hit something new.
Exactly. Then they might become temporary novices again.
The paper also mentioned applying LRI differently for, say, high versus low performers.
Yes, differentiation is key. The core LRI principles apply broadly, but how you implement them needs tailoring. Students struggling might need more explicit steps, more practice, more scaffolding for longer before moving to independence. High flyers might progress through those initial stages much faster and be ready for more challenge and autonomy sooner. It's about adjusting the degree and pace.
And that mapping of specific strategies to motivation factors, it's not like a strict recipe book, is it?
Not at all. It's indicative, illustrative. Teachers need to use their professional judgment. The paper mentions Marzano's idea of distributing strategies thoughtfully.
Yeah.
You don't try to do everything all at once.
Right.
It requires flexible, informed application based on the students, the content, the goals.
Well, this has been genuinely a deep dive. We've gone from the fragmented research landscape to this two-step integration process. Looked at the motivation and engagement wheel for intradomain motivation coherence, LRI for intradomain instruction coherence, and then explored that crucial interdomain cycle between them.
And hopefully seeing how these pieces fit together offers a more unified and practical way to think about learning. It gives a stronger base for research, but also for designing better teaching and learning experiences day to day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe final thought for everyone listening, as you reflect on this, how might these integrated ideas shape how you approach your own learning? Or if you're an educator, how might it influence your practice?
Yeah.
What could recognizing this deep connection between motivation and instruction mean for creating learning environments that are not just effective, but genuinely engaging, too?
Definitely something to mull over.
It is. Hopefully, this deep dive has given everyone a clearer map for navigating that really important intersection in educational psychology.